My next guest is Jason Morrison, formerly news director 2GB and then Channel 7. He's a seasoned newsman and a celebrated commentator. He joins us now in Sydney. Welcome, Jason.
David, it's great to celebrate with you. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Now, at the time that we're recording, the Liberal Party has announced in detail its nuclear power decision, where they're going to be and how they're going to be funded and who will own them. What do you think of that?
Well, look, I'll say I think it's crazy brave. And in saying that, I don't want people for a second to think I have any opposition to nuclear power at all. None. To me, it should have been done when Turnbull was making decisions about Snowy 2 point whatever. It should have been done then. So I'm absolutely on side. I think it's a tremendous thing, and to me it is devastating that a country like ours doesn't have this technology. Someone had to bite the bullet. Peter Dutton has. The question, I guess, is this the right time to do it? Because what I fear is going on here is you've turned the election campaign around. This election campaign was about Labor screwing up the Australian economy and about putting enormous pressures on people's lives and lifting their costs of living and seemingly having no solution. And what this now is a referendum on nuclear energy. And if there's one thing I know about the Labor Party, and that is, and you know, we can go back through history to prove this, they are tremendously good at the single issue scare. And let's just do a few. In my lifetime, the ones I can think of, ID card. They were very, very good on that front. Very, very good on that. They used it to their favour. That was when Hawke. We had Keating versus Hewson, GST. They used it very, very successfully. Keating should never have been re-elected, but he was re-elected because they made it all about the GST. They didn't talk about how the economy was in a parlous state back then. And then we move into the climate change era with Kevin 07, and it became, you know, this is what the battle's really about. And now we're into the, you know, we went through work choices. We've had that. Labor is very good at when you've got one target on the board and you've just got to keep throwing darts at it and throwing darts at it and throwing darts at it. And I have a feeling that's what they have enabled Labor to do here. And I worry about that because I know there are enough, I'll call them dipsticks because I can't say a more appropriate thing, in the Liberal Party to put fractures in Peter Dutton's great idea that will, I fear, make this look like they haven't got their act together. And that's wrong, but that's politics.
Well, we already have the state leaders of the Liberal Party seeming to dissent from his decision, both in Queensland and New South Wales, don't we?
Yeah, well, look, Section 109 of the Constitution, I think you know better than I, will probably defeat that anyway. Section 109 essentially means what the Commonwealth decides goes above what the states want to do. And so if they choose to legislate at a federal level that nuclear is the way to go, it doesn't matter what the states. But you're right, David, we've got the politics of this. So straight away, Labor's day one scare campaign is the Queensland Liberals don't want it, the so-and-so Liberals don't want it. Why does Peter Dutton? What do they know that they don't? And of course, in a country like this, the politics is different everywhere, but it's all very local. And Dutton, I call it crazy brave because he has gone and picked pretty much every one of these reactor sites will be, bar one, in a coalition flavoured seat. Even, you know, the Hunter Valley is a Labor seat, but it's normally been held by mostly conservative kind of Labor guys, like Joel Fitzgibbon and others. So, you know, he has kind of gone about this in a very self-deprecating way. But at the same time, you know, last night I got my insurance bill. It was $350 higher for an older car than it was a year ago. Cost of living. We got all notices from our power companies only 2 days ago telling us that all our power prices were going up. Cost of living. We've got the Reserve Bank kind of teetering on the do we or don't we, can we put the rates up? Cost of living. All of these things. And at the same time, the thing no one ever talks about is the grotesque Australian debt. $900 and something billion of total Australian government borrowing. And Labor is, the Liberals cooked a lot of that up, but Labor's cooked a large portion of it up, and they are just keeping it rising. So, we have a lot of pressures at the moment that are being felt every day by you, by people watching us right now, and they want action on that. And getting cheaper power is just one bit of that action. But I think this whole election campaign is going to be about scare now. I mean, there's some half-wit in the Labor Party who's circulating a photograph, a cartoon of three-eyed koala bears. That's where it's at. Now, you and I think that's funny, but there are people who don't get this and who, their understanding of nuclear power is what they see on The Simpsons. They don't really get it. And so, Labor knows how to play this game well. And I fear you have opened the door to them. I want nuclear power. Please don't think I don't. I want it done. I want it done when the coalition's back in power, but I want them to get into power first.
Yes, I agree with you. I think he was on a winning streak. And as we know, governments lose elections rather than the opposition winning them. And he certainly had all of the grounds to do very well in the election and to come, if he didn't win it, he'd come close to it.
Yeah.
It was the cost of living, it was the housing crisis which has been created by the present government, certainly exacerbated by the present government. Yep. All of those were in his favour. There was the NDIS, and the Labor knew how to deal with the NDIS because Dr. Andrew Charlton, before he became the member for Parramatta, wrote about it in the Sydney Morning Herald and said it was purely because of the Labor design of the NDIS to make sure that Tony Abbott couldn't reform it when he got into government.
Yes, right.
All of that's there, and he had everything going for him, and he did what we might call a Hewson. He produced the grounds for the Labor Party to create its own campaign.
And the tragedy of it is that it will be a deeply unfair campaign with smear commercials that will find the absolute lowest case denominator to be able to mount its argument. And that's what they do well. They do very, very well. They'll cherry pick bits and pieces. I mean, Matt Keane, the New South Wales former energy minister, the saboteur that was the man responsible for the parlous state of our energy in New South Wales, where I live. He's now on the outside of the tent and heading off, we believe, to the renewables industry. I will imagine that every second thing he's ever said will be thrown in the face in marginal seats in New South Wales, where they have to win a lot. And, you mentioned Parramatta, that's a seat they've got to win. They've got to win Bennelong. They've got to win the South Coast Gilmore, where Andrew Constance is running. Now you've got to name check and search every possible thing that has been said by absolutely everyone on the nuclear front, and you're letting Labor off the hook. I mean, they've brought, many hundreds of thousands of people unnecessarily into the country at a time that we can least afford to have a surge in population. They have changed in many suburbs the fabric, the look, the ideals of communities. Where I live, I walk down the local shopping centre, it doesn't feel like it did 5 years ago. The country is changing before our eyes. This stuff won't be talked about. We're going to be talking about three-eyed koalas and whatever else. I'm glad the country is doing something about it. But can I throw something at you? And I thought about this earlier because as I said, I'm sort of a bit, I'm bad on the politics on this one. I think it's a bad thing. I'm tremendously in support of the concept of nuclear. But every opinion poll, and there's a heap of them, every opinion poll on nuclear power is seeing the tide is coming in support. But it's not like the Yes campaign. It's not 60-40 yet, but it's on the way there. But it's still close to 50-50. And, I've got a list of them here. I mean, the most recent one, which I as much as I don't see great credit in what, say, the Essential Media polling company does, what we do know is they poll for Labor and for the union movements. And they've been asking this question for a while now, and you can plot the tide coming in slowly in support of nuclear. News poll, yeah, okay, people will, doubt news polls' veracity on this because the questions have changed over time, but it shows progressively that the tide is coming in. Every poll, even Lowy, the sort of often left-wing or centre-left Lowy Institute is looking at about 60% support. So everything is saying they're doing what the country wants. But that's a big different thing to winning an election, a big different thing. And I worry that we're sort of hoping that the Labor Party wants to play the game on what should be talked about, whereas I know all they will talk about will be this now. And all they will do is splinter away at it, and I just fear that, there's not a lot of people with a hell of a lot of backbone in the Liberal Party, and when push comes to shove, there'll be those who will just, be lukewarm on this. And it's pretty hard to be lukewarm on cost of living things when everyone is affected by it.
I have reservations about the Shadow Minister, Ted O'Brien, for narrow reasons, and that was that he was, I think, for 2 years, the chairman of the Australian Republican Movement. Now, the Australian Republican Movement is the Republican arm of the Labor Party. They waited until it was only established after Labor changed the platform, and they work very closely. They have a group which works closely with the Labor Party so that whatever emerges at the national conference then becomes part and parcel of what the Republican movement proposes. It's not that I'm anti-Republican. It was the model they proposed in 1999, which was to revenge the dismissal of Gough Whitlam. It was to take away the reserve powers. And every model they produce, and they haven't produced many, takes away the reserve powers. So it's just to make sure that no future Labor Prime Minister can ever be subject to the check and balance of a Governor-General. That's the whole purpose of the process.
Well, I mean, the beauty of the system and the process in which it doesn't look at parties, it doesn't look at that, it just looks at problems and it solves problems. And we have a really good constitution that actually solves problems. A bit like the one where the premiers are saying we don't want any nuclear reactors in our states. You say, sorry, Section 109, go talk to the founding fathers, but we'll be putting it in there. We've got so much going for us in this country with our system at the moment. What we have going against us is the characters that find their way into the system, and that's a real problem. And I hadn't known that of Mr. O'Brien. I'm quite shocked to hear it, frankly, and that makes me just maybe it's time to do a little bit more work on his background. But you look at who should be doing the heavy lifting inside the Liberal Party and the National Party at the moment. They've got some great warriors out there that can argue the case, and they've got to step forward. But most of them are banished to the back bench. I mean, Matt Canavan, banished. Senator Antic, banished. Even Barnaby Joyce is not really being effectively engaged at the moment. So we've got a whole lot of people that really could be out there carrying this in the retail environment that are pushed to the side and allowed to look like fringe dwellers. They're not fringe dwellers. They're often saying things that the majority of Australians, and particularly in country areas, want to hear from their political leadership. It worries me at who has floated to the top in even Peter Dutton's Liberal Party at the moment.
Yes, and Dutton emerged, I think, as very strong and wise during the Voice referendum, because he was willing to stand against the opinion polling at the time and come out, and he also had good judgment there because he chose Senator Price as the replacement spokesperson in the Aboriginal Affairs portfolio. He did very well there, and I'm afraid I keep thinking of the Hewson period when Hewson did that enormous plan of what they would be doing when they got into government. I think you wait till you're in government to give the details. You don't do it from opposition because
far too honest. They're far too honest.
Yes, I think it's a mistake, and I think Dutton was going very well with the Voice referendum, and he should have just, I think, pursued that and depended on the things on which he was winning rather than this, which I agree with you entirely. I think this is sensible. Mind you, I also think that coal-fired power stations are sensible. And even if there is truth, I doubt if there is, but if there is truth in I think the discredited theory of man-made global warming, if there's truth in that, nuclear solves that, and the oppositions to those who are worried about such things as so-called carbon should be really down on their knees saying, well, yes, let's have
Yeah.
Let's have nuclear.
You know, the next front of this will be, all right, where are we going to put the waste? Which electorate's going to get the waste? and how will it be transported? And it'll become this. I can just see, they're very good at this, Labor. This is their whole, I mean, they never really have an enormous amount of pride in the socialist ideologies, but they do have a great ability to pull apart everyone else's. That's the magnificence of the Labor Party. And so they will go and find a way to make this matter in so many different electorates. And, you know, I'm just thinking about the map, you know, how will we get the nuclear waste from the Hunter Valley to Port Botany? Which electorates will it pass through? You know, I mean, we look at this and you go, oh, come on, spare me this BS. But that's what it will become. And, you know, this is why I'm with you. I think the detail is your undoing at an election. Deal with macro issues and basically turn it into a contest of broader ideas, but we're turning it into a contest of specifics. And, you know, right today, I know what will be going on. The news industry will be out at every location. There's going to be one of these sites looking for dissent. They'll be looking for someone, they'll be searching through documents, looking for people who said, no way in the world will we ever have one of these here. Interestingly, I was just talking to a friend who's doing exactly that today for one of the major news organisations, and he's in Lithgow. And Lithgow in New South Wales, Lithgow seems to want this thing. Now, Lithgow is the closest to metropolitan Sydney of all of these reactors. And you've got to go through marginal seats of the Blue Mountains. You've got to come down marginal seat that, you know, you start saying, how will Labor fight this? They'll turn it into, do you want nuclear waste coming through your neighbourhood? You know, and I mean, the country will never go anywhere if that's what if that's what we're worried about. But again, for anything good to happen, there has to be a change of government. For anything good at the moment to happen, for there to be a change in direction for the country, there has to be a change of government. And I just fear that we've taken a lot of steps forward from the Conservative side of politics. We've taken a few back just with this, putting this detail out.
Jason Morrison, I think you've put that very well, and that really sums up the situation, doesn't it?
I sadly feel it does, in a way. I sadly do. Thanks. Good on you, David.
Thank you.